it took a long point. It took a long time to get to this point. To actually, like, that was my dream, to make films on jiu-jitsu and teach jiu-jitsu for a living. So you can't just do that. You know, it takes a lot of, yeah, it took me many years of, you know, obviously like practicing, you know, making films, and obviously going up through the ranks, years and years and years of training jiu-jitsu to get to this point. But yeah, you know, now I'm doing what I always dreamed to do.
The Moved Entrepreneur Evolved podcast. Get on it.
I wasn't sure if I should do like the nice look or if I should do the old Theo Von, baby. What's up?
He's awesome, isn't he, that Theo Von?
He's great. Here we got Stuart Cooper. I'm already recording, so we're already all set. Fortunately, I've known you, Stu, for how long have I known you now?
Since
9 years?
2012, right? So 8 years.
Yeah, about 8 years. And we have quite the adventures. Hopefully this isn't the last time we do this, but I always think that your story is really interesting, and what Moved is about. It's about mind, body, and about business, and about revenue and transitions that are happening, and people's stories that happen throughout their life as they decide to go into commerce for themselves. And I think that transition with people is quite interesting. But I think that the story doesn't always start with like, what are you doing now, right? Because there's always like these beginnings and stuff. And so what I think is super cool is just kind of to start off with, you know, your story. If I were to kind of go forward, you know, you, Stuart, are a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, who have traveled all over the world, and you're a film specialist in Jiu-Jitsu, who now teaches Jiu-Jitsu. And I think that kind of the rock of what that is has a hell of a lot of stories around that, right?
Yeah. It took a long point. It took a long time to get to this point. To actually, like, that was my dream, to make films on jiu-jitsu and teach jiu-jitsu for a living. So you can't just do that. You know, it takes a lot of, yeah, it took me many years of, you know, obviously like practicing, you know, making films, and obviously going up through the ranks, years and years and years of training jiu-jitsu to get to this point. But yeah, you know, now I'm doing what I always dreamed to do.
Now that was because I know some of your story. It didn't start off with jiu-jitsu, right?
So right from the beginning.
Sounds like I'm checking you on your own story, but let me see your own stuff. But I mean, you started with weddings, is that right?
Well, actually, it did actually start with jiu-jitsu. I went to university.
Oh, okay.
I got a degree, and I went to university thinking you get a degree and then you get a job. You know, that's how they kind of advertise it. They even did say that. They're like, when you complete this degree, 95% of students go right into work in London, you know, in TV production or whatever it is that your degree is on. That just wasn't the case. And fair enough, the recession hit this time. This is 2009. So when I did finish my degree, there's no jobs anywhere. I had nothing to do, no job. So I saw UFC on TV, started watching it, took a liking to it, and then I wanted to try it. I wanted to try MMA, but the actual first gym I found was at a Muay Thai gym. So I started with Muay Thai boxing for probably like a couple of weeks. And then they had some jiu-jitsu classes on afterwards. And then I started going to those and actually preferred the jiu-jitsu. And then because I couldn't get a job, I just started training pretty much twice a day, every day, right from the beginning, you know, while I was looking for a job. And then I actually did get a job in London eventually, but it wasn't really something that I enjoyed. It was, I was sat behind a desk from 8 a.m. in the morning till 6 p.m. in the evening, sat behind a desk, staring at a computer screen, working for a company called Online Fishing TV. It was a boring job. And the only highlight of my day was when it got to like 6 p.m., I'd get out the door. And I had to get to Roger Gracie Academy. The class started at 6:30, so I had to get on my bike and cycle there as fast as I could to do the 6:30 to 7:30 and 7:30 to 9. So I did like 2.5 hours of jiu-jitsu every day, and that was like I said, the highlight of my day. But then I think it was 3 months into that job, and the boss, he tried to start keeping me behind for even more hours. So I started to make up excuses. He wanted me to do a few more write-ups for the website. So I started to make excuses. No, I've got plans. And at first he didn't ask me what my plans were, but then after a few times doing this, he's like, what plans have you got? Where are you going? Where do you need to be? I'm like, I'm going jiu-jitsu. And then he started giving me this lecture on how my job should be my first priority and my hobby comes second, and I'm never going to go anywhere with jiu-jitsu and it's a waste of time. He started referring to himself as being a karate black belt and he never went anywhere. And I basically I said, look, I'm going jiu-jitsu. It's the highlight of my day. Like, I'm going, I've been here since 8 a.m. in the morning to 6 p.m. in the evening, So he actually told me to go train, and then the rest of the evening think about what if I really want to continue at that job. So I really did not like this guy. I didn't like my job. So I went home that evening. I called him up the next day and just told him I quit.
He's like, wait a minute, that wasn't what I was trying to say.
Yeah, he actually did. He tried to like keep me back. He's like, no, like I think you could fit in well here. You're just gonna give it time. Like, no, I'm done. I'm done with this. This is not for me, So I had to move back up north for my parents because this was in London. And I was a blue belt this time, and this is when I started filming weddings. And that was all kind of by accident. How did it start? Yeah, I actually was a blue belt and I had an accident in training one day. My arm dislocated, and you can actually see the scar. Well, you can't really quite see it there. There's a big scar here, but I got, I took someone's back. They tripoded up. I posted my arm and my arm snapped back the opposite way. Pretty horrific injury, actually. I was out for a year. So just to keep my mind occupied, I got a video camera and started filming my friends training, going to the local competitions, started filming the tournaments. And one of my friends at the academy was getting married. So he asked me if I could film his wedding. He's like, mate, I will give you £300 to film my wedding. And I'm like, I have no job. I've just quit my job. I've got a dislocated arm. Like, so I just went to his wedding with like one arm, and filmed. I got £300. But at this wedding, I met a wedding photographer.
Did you just say you got to £300?
No, I got paid £300.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
No, I didn't weigh £300.
Okay.
Yeah, no. So I actually got paid £300, and that was kind of a lot for me right then because I didn't have anything. I was living with my parents. Like kind of looking for trying to still think, what am I going to do? Because I quit the first job I ever had. I have a degree, and then I was really confused of what I was going to do in life. I'm like 22. I'm 23.
Did you feel like you were freaked out at the time? Like, did you feel like at 22, like you had a lot of room to go, or did you feel like those pressures of
definitely I felt pressure and felt very overwhelmed by life. I'm like, holy shit, I've got to my whole life was in education, I never had to earn money. I've always been looked after, student loans, family. University was a great time. You barely do anything.
Well, and not only that, it's like you just go straight from education, right? And you're in education and then you stop. They say you have 95% chance of getting a job. And then next thing you know, you're like, wait a minute, there's no job, right? And then the second thing is, I'm going to leave the job I don't like.
Yeah.
And then you end up doing something when training jiu-jitsu actually costs money, right? So it's like there was this transition where you would have lost what you loved if you didn't find a way to support it at the time. I mean, it's either, you're 22 years old, either you're trying to make yourself better, you're partying, or you're like all these things are happening at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, what happened then? Where did I get up to? I lost my train of thought.
You were just directly into, you didn't go to 300 pounds. You had gotten 300 pounds for your film.
Yeah, that's right. So I met, there was a professional wedding photographer there. So I met her and I had the idea of sending her the wedding highlight, afterwards, with thinking that, maybe she'll like it and she'll give me some more work. And that's exactly what happened. I sent her a link to the video. She was really impressed. And fortunately for me at the time, it was unfortunate for her, but her husband was a wedding videographer. He ended up in hospital. I'm not sure what the reason was, but he was sick. So she called me up right away and she's like, hey, I have a wedding this weekend. I need someone to film it. My husband's sick, you know, I'll pay you £1,000. I'm like, whoa, £1,000. And I think this is like a few months later, and I just recovered from my arm. I'm healed and and I just got back training, and my shit luck, I actually got my foot broken. Someone put me in a foot lock in a tournament and broke my foot. So I turn up to this other wedding. The first time she met me, I've got a broken arm. The second time she meets me, I've got a broken foot. So I'm hobbling around this wedding.
She's like, you only got 4 limbs.
Yeah. So I filmed this wedding somehow on one leg. You know, the hospital gave me this space boot, so I didn't actually need crutches. I could actually walk around with this big cushiony foot. And then her husband was still sick the following weekend. So 2 weekends in a row, she gave me 2 weddings to film. So that was £2,000. And with that money, I invested in a much better video camera. And then I started to realize, wow, like I just made £2,000 in 2 weeks filming weddings. And I was very inexperienced at filming and editing, but this is how I learned to film and edit, was through weddings.
Yeah.
Because I had to learn quick, you know, like I just got paid all this money. And now I've got to work out how to put this thing together. And I've got to admit, the first few wedding films I made were not very good. You know, the first bride and groom were not happy with the first cut. It took a lot of re-edits, but, you know, I managed to make them happy in the end. And then I started to, like I said, like understand the process of filmmaking. And then that's when, this is around 2011 now, and this is when I really started to get into jiu-jitsu, and ADCC 2011 was happening. And all these world-class athletes in jiu-jitsu came over to UK to compete in the biggest grappling tournament in the world. So they were doing seminars all around the UK. So for fun, I would turn up to these seminars and film the actual seminar, film the techniques, and do interviews with the athletes afterwards. And that is when I first made my first few jiu-jitsu videos. And purely for fun, just because I like to, the only things I was good at school were art and sport. I was terrible at every other subject. So making videos for me has always just been something that I enjoy. And I would do it anyway. It's just something very therapeutic to me. You know, I would much rather sit down and edit a video than watch TV. You know, I don't know why that is. I couldn't explain it, but I think that's why people like my videos, is because I don't actually do it for money. I actually do it because I enjoy it. It's like something I really like to do. And
when that became a boost, I mean, that was at the point where, you know, do you think you could have done weddings forever? Do you think
Yes, actually, yeah, it really took off. I got to a point where I had a website, Stuart Cooper Videography, and every wedding that I did, you know, their friends were getting married and their friends were getting married. So I started actually making a living filming weddings. It was a great life because I would film on a Friday or a Saturday. The actual wedding day was quite a long day, quite stressful. Yeah, you got to get up at I was doing a lot of Chinese weddings, and those weddings start at 4 a.m. in the morning.
They're long, right?
So in Manchester, and I lived in a place called Preston, so I would have to literally get up at 1 a.m. and then get ready and drive there and get to the house for 4 a.m. where they do these games outside of the house at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. in the morning. It's very strange. And then it's a really long day. So I'd film from 4 a.m. in the morning all the way up to probably 2 a.m., you know, the next day.
What a cool way to see culture, right?
Yeah, it was interesting. And actually, even recently I posted a link to a video or a podcast, and I think it was the third wedding I ever filmed. We're actually friends on Facebook. She commented, "Wow, I remember you filming our wedding. It's good to see how far you've come." So it's kind of cool, you know, seeing that. But I was making a living as a wedding videographer. You'd film one day, but the rest of the week was for editing. So I could choose my own hours. So one stressful day of filming, but the rest of the time I could choose when I go to training, and then come back and do some editing, then go back to training. So I was actually training full time, but earning money at the same time. So I could have actually stayed in England and made a living off filming weddings. But after my first few jiu-jitsu videos that kind of picked up, they got really popular. I had the idea to, I suppose this drive, this desire to travel, to go to Brazil. I really wanted to go to Brazil to learn jiu-jitsu. So that's when I actually reached out to this hostel in Rio de Janeiro, sent them some video links to some of the jiu-jitsu videos I'd actually made on Gunnar Nelson and Ryan Hall, and asked them, look, I'd love to come to Brazil for like 3-4 months. Have a look at these videos, tell me what you think. And I could come out to Brazil and make these kind of videos with some of the athletes that reside in Rio de Janeiro, and I could promote your hostel. In return, all I want is a free accommodation and a free training. That's it. They emailed back the same day saying, hey, when do you want to come? I'm like, whoa, like I'm like 25 now this time. So it was like a dream come true. I was like, wow, I'm about to go to Brazil, train jiu-jitsu, you know, and make jiu-jitsu videos. And that was the beginning, you know, because no one else was doing it. I literally was one of the, I think I was like kind of the first person to do something like this.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of a domino effect after that. You know, I was in Brazil for 3 to 4 months, and I had, before I went there, I had this idea in my head. I'm going to go to Brazil, and that's it. I'm going to stay there. I'm going to be a gringo in Brazil. Yeah. But when I went there, it didn't feel like home to me. I can't exactly explain why, but it didn't grab me. I actually, after 3 months, I wanted to return to England. And that's what I did. I returned to England. I got a job with Cage Warriors. Flew all around.
So you stayed. So kind of like on the storyline, I think it's interesting because it's like you literally like, if you look at it this way, you broke your job, you broke your arm, you broke your foot, right? And then you kind of just went in a funny way. You're like, well, I wonder if somebody else will break in just an idea. You just like threw something. It's kind of like a pattern of just breaking in a way.
Yep.
I mean, in a way, right? I mean, it's kind of like you're going through this process, and like certain things that you think are a certain way, they just like totally break. And you're like, well, maybe I'll go try this. And that's where you ended up coming back. Now, Cage Warriors, that, what do we have out here? We had King of the Cage, I think, at the time.
King of the Cage, yeah.
But it was very, they called them smoke. It was almost like the transition from a smoker fight. And for anybody that doesn't know what a smoker fight is, it's basically an underground fight where they try to get away with it and then shut the doors as quick as they can without anybody showing up. But I would say that Cage Warriors, King of the Cage, they were the first to kind of start to sanction those. Wouldn't you agree? Like they were outside of the UFC, right? They were trying
So I think King of the Cage, if you became champion of King of the Cage, you go directly to the UFC. Same with Cage Warriors. If you become the champion of that weight division in Cage Warriors, that's a direct, route to UFC. That's what Conor McGregor became two-weight world champion in Cage Warriors. And then he went to UFC and he became two-weight world champion in the UFC. In Brazil, it's something called Jungle Fight. That's where Paulo Costa was the middleweight champion of Jungle Fight. Mm-hmm. And then he went into the UFC. So each country have their like MMA show that build up the talent. And then from there, they transition to the UFC.
What a wild time that was, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, everything was kind of like rogue. And so I think that's like, that's where you came in. So it's like, well, we don't have anybody really filming this shit. Like there's nobody, I mean, you might have a guy with a camera or something, but then you realize through wow, videos actually kind of promote everything. Right. Yeah. So then you came back, or did they see your stuff and then you asked them, or how did that work?
No. So I was actually in Rio de Janeiro. And then I decided to go up to Recife, which is northeast Brazil. So I went up there to Braulio Estima's old academy to do a little bit of filming for a video I was doing on Braulio. And while I was there, the promoter of Cage Warriors just happened to be at the gym. He was cornering a UK fighter in Recife. So I just remember I was like, in Recife, Rio is very touristy. There's, white people everywhere. But when up to Recife, I felt like I was like the only tourist in town. It's just not very touristy up there. Everyone's staring at me. Sure. And then I'm going to the academy and I see this other white guy called Patrick Vickers. I'm like, oh man, he's definitely English. You could just tell by the clothes he was wearing. Yeah, yeah. So I started talking to him. We trained a little bit. And I'm like, so what are you doing here? And he told me. And he told me he was the promoter of Cage Warriors. And I kind of thought he was full of shit at the time. It turns out he was. And we became friends. And then he actually came back to Rio with me. I went back to Connection Rio to train in Baja Tijuca, and he came with me. And then he went back to England. I went back to England. And sure enough, he sent me a message on Facebook saying, hey, do you want a job with Cage Warriors? So it was cool how that happened, you know?
You thought he was full of shit.
When I first met him, you know, over the years, I meet so many people and they kind of like, they say who they are and it's not really who they are. They exaggerate, you know, there's a lot of
Well, I think that also like it's really funny. I think I'll correlate the conversation. I guess it's like, especially when you combine martial arts and you combine people running their mouth. It's like, how many people are like, they all think you could, like, what did I tell people? Like, I lived in Thailand and did Muay Thai and did that whole thing. I said, what'd you learn? I said, well, I learned I can kick a lot of people's ass. I also learned there's a shitload of people can whoop my ass.
Yeah.
So there's like a sense of like bullshit you're getting through with it. So like now you get back and you're like, wait a minute, this guy literally pulled through. So it's like, again, another broken concept.
Yeah.
We have a pattern here, Stu. So then you get with Cage Warriors at the time. Now, were you filming? And here's something that's interesting, I think, that like you were just going in and filming. Like you had no, hi, I'm Stuart Cooper Films. You had no idea of that at the time. You were just basically like, hey, I'll film, right? Or had you created the concept of Stuart Cooper Films yet?
The first few videos I made, I actually created actually it was a guy I partnered with to film weddings. And I was telling him, like, after my first few jiu-jitsu videos, I was like, maybe I should put my name to these videos. And he said, you shouldn't put your name to it because if something ever goes wrong, that's your name tarnished forever. You know, if you didn't do a bad job, because he had a company called Coco Weddings instead of using his actual name. And the reason he said that is because let's say he did a bad job, that's his name could get passed around like as a bad name. So he uses Coco Weddings. So he said, come up with a media company name. So I came up with Grapple Videos. They've actually, the first YouTube channel I ever made and Facebook page and videos, it was grapplevideos.com, and I actually had the website and everything. And it started getting a lot of traffic to it. But then it was actually, who was it? It was one of my professors back in England called Paul Hartley. And he was like, no, you shouldn't have Grapple Videos. People think you're a big media company. And sure enough, people were sending me emails asking for jobs. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. It's just like me. I don't make any money from this. I'm like just pretending to be bigger than I am. So it was that professor, Paul Hartley. He said, no, you should just call it Stuart Cooper Films. So he really encouraged that. And he said, if you don't want to call it Stuart Cooper Films, at least put your name in it, a film by Stuart Cooper, so people know you did it. And then you're going to get more work that way. And he was actually right. So that's what I did. I started to put my own name to these videos. And then I got the logo made, which is still the logo I use today. You know, I've thought about changing the logo a few times. It's kind of like Beverly Hills copywriting, but I don't know. It's kind of stuck. I like it though.
Well, I don't think I said it yet, but this is Stu's shirt right here.
That's my new Stuart Cooper Jiu-Jitsu logo. Yeah. Yep, not bad. I've got the rash guards now. That's named after one of my films, Jiu-Jitsu: A Way of Life. So yeah, I think
you got it tattooed, right?
Yeah, I got it tattooed on my bicep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, after I was in the middle of working for Cage Warriors, I actually had a 12-month contract with them, but I honestly wasn't getting paid that much money. I was getting to travel all around Europe, but and it was a good experience. But after about maybe 5 or 6 events, I got the opportunity to come out to Tiger Muay Thai. I actually had the same idea. What I did in Brazil, I sent an email to Tiger Muay Thai. Hey, look, I make all these videos. They get a lot of views. Would you consider giving me free accommodation, free training if I come out to Thailand and make videos out there? And they, again, email me back right away. And I actually had a friend out there already, which helped, called Ryan Jones, which you know as well. Mm-hmm. So I got the offer to go out right away, and I didn't want to miss out on the opportunity. So I remember calling up Cage Warriors. I'm like, hey, I'm going out to Thailand. And they were a little bit upset about it, but they understood, you know, like, hey, you're under contract. I'm like, look, this is an opportunity, you know, like I'm not really getting paid that much. And it wasn't really, I didn't see it leading anywhere. So yeah.
Now, when you look from the outside in, and that's where you and I met, that's kind of where that's where you and I kind of collided, was right there with Tiger Muay Thai. But actually it was, what was that? Center bar? Was that it? Was it center bar? What was
the horseshoe bar?
Horseshoe bar.
Yeah.
That's right. So basically though, like, it'd be interesting just from your side, it's like, here you are, you're starting this brand or whatever in it, you really, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but at the time you're like, I don't know this is happening. It's like, I've done some weddings. I'm now doing some jujitsu. I now have used the jujitsu for like accommodation and so that you could train. I mean, in a sense as well, right?
I did all this to train. That was always, my priority was always to train, you know? So I did all these films to give me, it was like funding my traveling and my training. Yeah.
And then you see, and like, I mean, I won't go into my story right now, but basically you see this, was it Ryan that had had you been following Ryan and seen Tiger Muay Thai, or did you see the videos and then just be like, hey, I want to go? Like, how did you find this place in the jungle in Thailand?
In Thailand. So I already knew about Tiger Muay Thai. When I was at university and I first saw UFC, I started getting really into it. I was going on all the MMA websites, and at the time, Roger Huerta and Mike Swick were big names. And I started following their video blogs, and they were in Thailand, you know, like, and I saw the video blogs of them going around Thailand on the scooters, doing Muay Thai, going to the beach. I'm still at university at the time. I just started jiu-jitsu. I'm like, man, that looks awesome. I want to go out to Thailand. And I even like reached out to them then. I was about to book 1 month in Thailand, but my friends were actually going to Ibiza to party for a week. And in the end, I actually went and partied in Ibiza for a week instead of going to Thailand.
So I was going to go to Thailand to train, and then I got asked to go to Ibiza, so I went to Ibiza.
Yeah. So,
well, I mean, in a way, it's like I mean, you could go and do it for a week, you do it for a month, but I think what I'm getting, like, you knew that there was going to be a commitment at Tiger, and you were like, look, I want to check this box.
I wasn't even making videos then. So it's probably a good thing I didn't go then, because who knows how things would have been different. I wouldn't have done anything different, because you just don't know how that could have altered the path. I'm so happy to be where I am now, because if I'd made any of it different, it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
If I just made this decision or this decision, I might not even be alive now. Who knows? You just don't know.
And we can go into those stories as well.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of those. But
So
Sorry.
Go ahead. So you go to Thai, so you end up connecting, you see the videos through Roger, and you're just like, I got to go to this play. Did you talk to Will, or who did you talk to over there?
No, it was actually Ryan. So I already knew about Tiger Muay Thai, but when I was in Brazil, Ryan actually reached out to me. He's back in England, and he's like, hey, how did you end up out there in Brazil making these videos? And I told him what I did. And I told him what I intend to do with Thailand. It's like, yeah, after this, I'm going to do the same thing with Tiger Muay Thai. So Ryan went and did it. Ryan was like, messaged Tiger Muay Thai. And he went out there, and he got like an internship out there.
Yeah.
And then he got me the job out there.
Got it.
So yeah, and then that's how so he helped me get out there. And then I remember coming out to, we actually went out together. Ryan returned, he went out there for like maybe 6 months. He returned to England. We met up in London, and then we both flew back out to Thailand together. I remember it was the worst trip, because I trusted him. I said, I'll get the same flight as you. I didn't even question the flight. I was like, just book me. I'll give you the money. Just, you book the flight for me. Just tell me how much I owe you. He's like, it's £300. I'm like, £300? Man, that's cheap. London, Heathrow to Thailand. I didn't even question it. I wish I did. There's a reason it was £300. It freaking went all over. I remember we were in Mumbai airport for like 12 hours. I was so pissed off. I'm like, dude, why did you book this flight? It was like the longest journey. It literally took us 2 days. What could have been like a 16-hour flight ended up being literally something like 36 hours or 40 hours of traveling. Anyway, we got there in the end, and then I met you on my, I don't know, it was the first week. I'm not sure if I met you on the first day, the second day.
I don't think you were.
The very first day.
Yeah.
I remember we're in the horseshoe bar. You came in and you just had that tattoo
Yeah.
on your arm. Yeah, you just got that done. Yeah.
What a great,
I mean, pool. Do you remember we were playing pool? I was with Kitty and Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really cool because you had already known somebody already that had kind of been there, and they probably gave you the ropes. And then I had been there for a few months already.
Yeah.
And then there's always an interesting conversation. So when I was out there, I was not doing work in Thailand, but at the time I was building programs and doing some stuff out here in the US and outsourcing things out to other countries and things like that. And so I was working like late at night, but then there's this weird thing that like when you're traveling and you're going somewhere like Thailand or somewhere that has all these different, let's say, extracurricular areas that you can get yourself in trouble. Yep. You're right. You could get around the wrong people. You could get yourself killed. I mean, there's just like, I tell people it was a lot like the ocean. Thailand is a lot like the ocean. It's beautiful, but you always got to respect it, And I think that when you landed, it's really funny because I remember it. I remember you on that horseshoe, and I remember you just looking so innocent and just like, I'm here and I'm ready. And I'm just like, you're going to be on for a ride, but you got lucky because you knew someone, right? And then they kind of got you in. And then now at that time, did you put away your brand in a sense? And then did you just do films for Tiger Muay Thai, or did you find a way to incorporate your brand's name? Because you've been able to carry that, right? And still work at a certain place, which I think was probably, did you negotiate that, or did it just kind of go that way?
Honestly, Tiger Muay Thai didn't even question it. So they had like a few video interns. There was Jeff Saylor, who is now Israel Adesanya's personal
good old Jeff.
Jeff is doing big things now.
Yeah.
JP was was one of the interns as well, and Ryan Jones. And so I went there and I actually I had my Stuart Cooper Films YouTube channel at this time. So I started branching out, not just jiu-jitsu videos. I was making videos on the MMA fighters and the Muay Thai fighters at Tiger Muay Thai. But I would make them for Tiger Muay Thai, but we would upload them on the Tiger Muay Thai YouTube channel. But I was also allowed to upload them on my own YouTube channel because my channel had a lot of subscribers. So they had, Will Elliott was the manager at the time, and he was an awesome boss. He is now one of the bosses at DCS, which is where I work now. So yeah, it was easy. They never, they weren't, I know what the word is. They weren't very strict about, when I worked at Evolve MMA in Singapore, now that was a different story. I made videos for them and I was not allowed to put my name on it at all. It was all Evolve MMA branded. That's a whole other story though.
Yeah.
They do things differently over in Singapore.
Yeah.
It's not as laid back. Yeah,
I think that it's like, so you get involved, like I was in Singapore and it's, I don't know if, but one of the craziest things in Singapore, it was, anything over, I'm going to get this wrong probably, but I think it was like anything over a 3.2 liter motor, you pay a $60,000 tax, Singapore dollar tax. That's good. Almost like a bar, like a medallion or something like that. Like a taxi cab driver gets they buy the medallion, or like a bar buys a driver, they buy a liquor license or something. But basically the vehicle is I believe it's like 10 years. I could get this wrong, but it's like 10 years, $60,000 in tax. So if you noticed that when you were in Singapore, you noticed there was like no old cars?
Yeah. There's not that many cars anyway. And the reason is what you're saying, it's so expensive to have cars there. They make it really expensive. And honestly, you wouldn't really want a car in Singapore. The public transport, the MRT is so...
It was really good. Yeah.
It's great. It's kind of like being in New York. You would never want a car in New York. It's actually a burden. And same in London as well. When I lived in London, I actually had a car temporarily, and it was the worst. It was better to go around on a bicycle,
Yeah, I think that it's like when you travel and like you do these things, I think it's like what I think is interesting about your story is that you've carried your brand with you, even though when you were with Evolve, you kind of had to go that route, but you still had your own stuff. And I think that like one of the things, building a brand and bringing it with you, even when you go and work with somebody else, you kind of feel like you kind of have you still have something, right? That you can like lean on a little bit. Like you don't feel like you're fully there. And when you were building that brand, what are some of the things maybe that you've learned about just having a brand? Like, did you get, I know your name has it on it, but did the Stuart Cooper film get bigger? Like, do you think it has its own name now and not just you? I mean, it is you, but you see what I'm saying?
I never actually intended to kind of be a brand, but I remember like I would go to different countries, filming, making videos, and sit down, speak to people, and people said, wow, you've actually developed a brand now. Like people, because in my videos, by this time my videos had my YouTube channel was starting to get millions of views, and my Stuart Films was on every single video, so it really went out there. So yeah, like people in the jiu-jitsu community really started to recognize my name, and it made it easier to get jobs. When I first started making these videos, I really had to, it was hard, like getting permission to film because no one knew who I was. But after like really getting my name out there, like even now, I'll email a particular athlete that I want to make a video on. I'm like, hey, like, I'd love to come out to Ohio and make a video with you. They're like, yeah, man, I'd love to. It'd be an honor. I love your work. So it just makes that easier. I can just email pretty much any jiu-jitsu athlete now and be able to go out there and film, and and they'll be excited about it. Obviously, there's a cutoff point with certain. It won't be as easy to go and do that with like a Conor McGregor. That's probably not going to happen. There's a point. There's a level of fame that is just
Well, I mean, I think that this is something that's interesting too. Is like there was a moment, because I remember being there in Thailand with you or whatever, and all of us commoners that didn't have the Stuart Cooper name at the time, we would look at our Instagram and all of a sudden we look at yours and it was like through the roof, right? I mean, you would just be like all these, almost like a professional athlete. What was that moment where you were doing weddings, then you said, I'm going to create Stuart Cooper Films, then you created a couple of them, and then what was the video that made you go like, this is even more than, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is more than I thought. Even if I try really hard, there was something that happened. What video was that, and when did that trigger?
It was definitely it was the ones I did with Braulio Estima, the very first road to ADCCs. They got really popular. I remember posting those on YouTube and them getting like 30,000 views in one day. That's when I really knew I was onto something. I realized, wow, no one else is doing this at all. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's when I actually went out to Brazil and I made the ADCC 2011 highlight and posted that online, because I remember that was the moment. I remember being in Brazil. I was speaking to one of my friends, Corey Ambrose. He had a song playing in the background, the Jezebels, a little piece. And I was listening to it. I was like, hey, man, who's this? I like this song. He's like, this is the Jezebels. And I'm like, never heard of them. He's like, dude, you should put this to a highlight. This would go well to like a jiu-jitsu highlight. I'm like, maybe it would. And I had a conversation. I'm like, you know what? I've got some ADCC footage upstairs. I still haven't made a highlight. I'm going to go and do it. So I went upstairs and spent the next 5 hours editing this highlight together to the music, actually edited to the actual song. And then I uploaded it on YouTube and posted it on my Facebook page. Didn't think anything of it. Actually, no, I uploaded it on Vimeo at the time, higher quality, a posh YouTube.
Yeah.
And then I woke up in the morning and I checked the stats because I saw a load of notifications, a load of comments. I'm like, wow, people really like this. And I checked Vimeo and it said 50K. And I'm thinking, maybe it had 50 views overnight. 50K? That can't be right. Sure enough, overnight it had 50,000 views. I couldn't believe it. And that obviously and then it just went on from there. it just went viral, you know. But that's still probably my most, well, one of probably the top, yeah, I would say top 5, maybe my best video I've ever made. People really seem to like that one.
And then that was what kind of anchored you. Were like, look, I'm onto something. I can actually kind of work myself like around this.
Yeah.
Right?
There was a lot of people encouraging me as well. The owner of Connection Rio, Dennis Ash, he was a big influence to me as well. He was really kind of like pushing me like, hey, you know, you're doing some good stuff here. Like you could really like make a living from this.
Yeah.
You know, you could go far with this, you know, people, you've tapped into a niche. So
now when that like, and this goes into maybe some fun stories, but like you went through, and knowing you obviously, you know, I have some inside information, but at the end of the day, you traveled, you started this brand, right? Now you have this global brand. You grew up in London, right?
I grew up in northwest England, Preston.
Okay, Preston. And now I know that your family has a family-owned local business, right? And
yep.
Then you decided to leave and go back home. And this is something I think that is quite interesting to this whole moved, for what I do, is there's a lot that goes on there. A lot mental goes through, and physically things change. And I know personally when I came back, I went through all these crazy things because you're bringing in a lot of information. When you went back, what happened when you went back to Preston? Like, now you're traveling, now you have a brand, now you have all this stuff. You go back home, right? And it's like, what was going on in that environment? Because you kind of have a business now, in a sense. You had a business.
So when I went out to Brazil, that was actually my first time really traveling, like leaving England. So I was gone, and I actually did. It was because it was my first time. I'm still quite young, you know. I did get homesick, and so I wanted to return home. So I went back to England, and it didn't take long for me to get the urge again. I got back to England, I'm like, actually, I don't want to be here. So I started immediately looking for other ways. I think before I actually went out to Thailand, I actually did a few trips out to America first. So I met up with Braulio Steamer again a few times, and we did a few more videos together. And then I went out to California with him a couple times. Actually, I think before I went to Thailand, me and Braulio went to California together, and then we went to Boca Raton, Florida together. We trained at the Black Zillions. And at this time, we met Eddie Alvarez was training for his rematch with Shinya Aoki, who I would later, years later, become roommates with in Singapore. It's weird, martial arts is such a small world. Shinya Aoki, yeah. So,
actually, he was at the Metamoris.
Yes, yeah. So I remember we went to that one together. I remember the Metamoris. I was actually in Thailand at the time. So this is after being in Florida with Braulio. I went over to Thailand. I met you. You were, I think, maybe we hung out 6 months in Thailand. Mm-hmm. You returned to California, and Metamoris, which was the first jiu-jitsu super fight show, reached out to me and said, hey, look, we'll pay for your flights. Come out to California. We want you to help film the first Metamoris. So I went out there.
Was that the first? I think it was the second.
Yeah, it was the second. It was Metamoris 2, Kron Gracie versus Shinya Aoki. And you must have seen on Facebook that I was going. And you just turned up. You literally just popped up. I'm like, whoa, where'd you come from?
Yeah, we chatted or whatever. And I was like, hey, I think I'll be there. Oh, no, did I pick you up at the airport?
Maybe. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think I picked you up at the airport.
You may have, yeah. And you stayed in the hotel room. And I managed to get you a ticket for Metamoris. It was a great event. And then we went to the after party in the hotel. And we were partying with Renato Laranja that night, and Eddie Bravo. Do you remember?
You know what's funny about that story is, well, there's another story that involves that story, but basically it's so funny because do you remember this? We came out of Metamoris, and who did I run it? I ran into like what's his name from oh man, what's his name? Puts his hands in his pants. I can't remember his name. He's now a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He was on the board. Families. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So we ran into him. And then when we were leaving, I think I ended up chatting with like Nate Diaz or whatever. And then we go out to my truck. Do you remember this? And you get in the car and I just hear somebody like, hey, can we get a ride? And I'm like, oh, no problem. So I get in my truck. Do you remember this? I have no idea. I'm just like sitting there like, okay. So I start the car, I start to take off. And then I hear someone in the back and hey man, you mind if I smoke?
And that was Eddie, right? Eddie Bravo.
And then I'm like sitting there, I'm like, well, I don't like cigarettes in my car, but this is everything is going so good. Why stop the flow, right? So I don't even take a chance to look behind me, and I'm just driving and I'm talking to you or something. Yeah, not a problem. And then you hear it, and then I'm like, wait, that's not cigarettes, that's weed. And then I basically turn around and I'm like, that's Eddie Bravo. And that was a great story at the time because really you were getting brought in as a business. But because the martial arts world, and it kind of has been, I think that it's trying. I think it did it with karate. And now you look at jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai and stuff, they're trying to figure out, because there's certain things about karate that they probably learned a little that jiu-jitsu schools don't want to do, right? There's some things that they probably learned. But that was a time where it was like, it was kind of rogue, right? And at that time we go down and he was gonna fight Helio, right? Was he fighting? Who was he fighting? He was fighting
who, Eddie Bravo?
Yeah.
Hoyler.
So basically we go down there. Do you remember this? And Eddie Bravo's with us. We go down and right when we get there, he's with us. And then all the Gracies are there. And he looks over at us and he goes, well, I think my time is all done here. I don't think I should be here any longer. He just back to shit and he laughed. And it wasn't that he was like scared or something. He just was like, I'm going to be fighting this guy, I think next or so. And
it was going to be the next match. It was Meta Morris 3.
Oh, that was 3. Okay.
Yeah. So we met up at 2, but I think we also, I'm not sure.
We did 3. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I went to number 3. I was supposed to.
Oh, you were supposed to do 3.
Yeah. That's just the whole story. It's in itself. Yeah. Halleck Gracie, was going to hire me to do Meta Morris 3 as well. And he wanted me to make, so the Jiu-Jitsu Way of Life video, that was supposed to play. That was supposed to be the opening video. I made that video. That was going to be played before Eddie Bravo and Hoyler Gracie walked out for the main event. And Halleck Gracie promised me a X amount of money to do that. The day before the event, he's like, oh, yeah, we can't pay you this much. And I'm like, all right, no problem. At least my name's on it. You know? It gets to go out to all these people. He's like, yeah, and you can't have your name in it. It has to be Mena Morris branded. I'm like, whoa, hold on. You don't, I'm not even allowed my name in it. That's like, because videos take me a lot of time. Sure. That's like me spending out like days, weeks, painting a picture and then someone else signing their signature on it. I just can't bring myself to do it. It's like, you can't take credit for my work. So that's the way I looked at that.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think that goes into like, what is the film process? Like, I think that over the years, yeah. So, I mean, maybe break into a little bit of like, what is I think that there's a difference, right? There's an advertisement, right? And where you tell that, but Stuart Cooper Films, could I categorize it as a storytelling film way that you handle is you do it like a story. And so what is the film process for somebody? It was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to hire someone to do a storyline type film of what I do. What is that process?
You mean what was the process that I use?
Yeah, like just how do you do it? Like, what is it? Like, other than
with me, it's always it's however I like, because I'm such a fan of jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. It's always, and I'm always following online. I'm always watching matches. It's whoever. For me, it's like, God, I'd love to like recently, like I can't travel at the moment. When the borders do open back up, The first 3 films that I want to make are on Dante Leon, Wagner Rocha, and the Rotolo twins. The Rotolo twins are actually in San Diego at Atos. And it's because they're like doing big things. I don't know, they're competing all the time. And I love their style. Wagner Rocha, he's going to make a great video because he's a character in himself. He's just got mean jiu-jitsu. He just does mean things. It's a different, it's not like some people have a nice flowy, you know, style of jiu-jitsu. But Wagner's like, hey, I'm going to fucking like make this mean and ugly. You know, he'll like literally cover your mouth with his hand. He'll trap your arms. But he's, you know, so, when I do go finally make a film with Wagner, I'll write some questions down that I'm interested to know myself. I'm interested to know how he got started, what his training process is like. Does he do more sparring? Does he do more drilling? You know, how does he think the best way to improve? How does he study? What's his strength and conditioning like? Does he take his diet seriously? You know, I'll just write all these questions down, and then I'll spend, before I even actually start the film and actually train with them the first few days, I arrive there and I just want to roll with everybody. And that's good in itself because you get to know a lot. When you roll with someone and you're trying to choke each other, you really get to know that person a lot more. So I always thought that was a good way to kind of get to know them first before we even begin filming. Is actually just.
Are you saying that you roll with them?
Yeah. Yeah, I turn up and just train for the first few days and then I'll start the filming, you know? So it's not like just some media journalist turning up that's going to do an interview and then edit it a particular way and then take something out of context and put a headline up on a website. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah, I'm actually that. So, yeah, I'll film the training. I'll pick a particular day to do the interview somewhere quiet. And then, yeah, basically I just turn up and just get as much footage as possible, ask as many questions that I want to know myself as possible. And then when I've finished and return back to wherever it is I'm going to do the editing, I choose the music first because I like to edit to the music. And that's the most tedious bit for me, is actually choosing the music. I'm actually working on a new film now with John Danaher. And it's a nightmare to find music that is actually copyright free or cheap enough to buy the license. That's good. Actually,
you have a story on that. I think that I mean, having people chase you down because of music, is it?
Oh my God, yeah.
Is it worth it?
Is what worth it? Sorry.
There's a lot of people that gamble on that, right? They gamble.
Yeah, well, I did it the wrong way. So when I started my YouTube channel, Stuart Cooper Films, I just didn't care about using copyright-free music. Honestly, I'm surprised I didn't get sued more because I didn't think I was big enough to even, you know, I didn't think I was getting enough views. And I couldn't bring myself to use this copyright-free music that just wasn't very good. I would literally use really good popular music to my videos. And you can get away with that on YouTube, but you're never going to monetize it. Say I make a video on a particular athlete and I use a track from, I don't know, whoever, you know, and I don't have the permission, they get the monetization money. I don't get anything. So I did that for years. So what I'm actually doing right now is re-editing all of these videos and putting copyright-free music to it. So I've got a lot of messages on social media. Hey, what happened to this video? What happened to that video? I've actually taken them down and I'm re-editing them and replacing the music. But it's actually good because I'm re-editing them better than they actually were. And I'm a much better editor now. So
yeah, you did like, it's interesting because it's like and I keep going back to this because I think as business if you carry a brand, even if you can't fully engage in it, you know, I did that a lot with Moved. It's like, I'm just, you know, keep it going. And even if you don't have the final piece to it, you create a story that like kind of goes with you. And then when you start to monetize it, then you already have that feeling. People already kind of know it, but maybe you didn't make it the brand and have all, you know, the transactions and all those things, but you haven't, how do I say this? You haven't created a business model all the way to execute it. But the moment that you want to, you then already have the main piece of the puzzle. And that is the emotion that comes with the brand, what it is that you do, right? So then you can scale on top of that. When you, you've done another thing that's quite interesting, and I don't know if you'd recommend other people do it, but now you're in Canada right now, right? So it took you to, you're at DCS, which is another guy that I'll probably have on here, Ryan Diaz, and he's building a gym out there. And what a great story to hear about his, you know, things going on with COVID and all that kind of stuff. But one thing that I think that is quite interesting, when you went to DCS, they didn't just bring you on as staff. Like, they brought you on as a brand. Yeah,
that was great. That was the real, I suppose, selling point for me. You know, because I loved my life in Thailand, but when I was at Tiger Muay Thai, it was never going to be, you know, it was never going to be Team Stuart Cooper Jiu-Jitsu. It was always going to be Tiger Muay Thai, and I never actually had a group of people, a group of students that I could watch grow. You know, it's a holiday destination, so people come and go. So I couldn't actually. There was a few students there that actually lived there all year round that I could see progress and I could grade, but only like a handful. You know, and a lot of the MMA guys didn't do jiu-jitsu. A lot of the MMA guys are in the UFC. For whatever reason, they don't think jiu-jitsu works and they don't think it's good for MMA. I don't know why they think that, because if you look at their losses, it's usually by submission. But yeah, so Ryan Diaz, I remember he came out to Tiger Muay Thai, and he had I think he's about 4 years into DCS. And I've not seen him for years. And I was like, hey, man, you should come out to Vancouver. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, that'd be good. I'd like to come out for a month. So why don't you come out for a month? I'll pay for your flight. You know, we'll book a seminar. And you could do some privates when you're there to see if you like Vancouver. So he kind of planted the seed. And then sure enough, a few months later, he flies me out to Vancouver. And he pretty much says, like, look, what do you want? I want you to stay here. Like, what do you want? And I'm like, you know, I was really in 2 months. Like, man, I love it here. But also, there's a lot of things going wrong in Thailand. You know, staph infections being the main problem, and plus the manager of Tiger Muay Thai wasn't the most pleasant of people. Didn't really have the best interest for his employees. Didn't have their health, you know, as a priority. So he said, look, if you come out to Vancouver, you're going to have your own team. You can have Stuart Cooper Jiu-Jitsu. It's going to be, you'll be inside of DCS, but it's going to be your Jiu-Jitsu team. And I'll help you grow it. And he told me his plans to expand all over Vancouver and maybe beyond. And so when I went out for that month, I really saw how driven Ryan was. He's a doer. He's just full steam ahead, you know, like because I'd met him before, but he was fighting at the time. I never realized he was so, you know, so motivated and driven towards business. And he's done incredible things. In 5 years, you should see the new DCS gym. It's incredible what he's done in 5 years. It's really amazing. Yeah. So,
I mean, being able to, and I think that's something that's like super cool because you created a brand, because you did all these things, because you did all that. It's okay to work for someone, but how beautiful is it that you got to attach yourself. You are working for them, but you're also working for yourself. And in a sense, you're almost doubling down. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of that. And in a way, it's a collaboration in a sense. You know, you collaborated in that. And I think that you just kind of laid out why it worked. And I think that it was like, listen, I'm going to let you be you. And you're going to bring a value to it. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, there's an out for both of you. He's still going to need jiu-jitsu, and you're still going to want to move forward. So I think that this is something that I had a conversation with someone the other day, and this goes, it's a lot of people try to solve like problems that are 3 years from now. And it's like, that's not even a problem. Right. And it's like, in a way, you guys were able to build something in the very beginning, try it. And at the end of the day, you could go your way, he could go his, but the strength of actually you guys together is actually better. Yeah. Better. Now, are you filming now? Are you doing much filming? I mean, how has COVID affected filming? How is give me like what's up with like your thoughts on filming and what's up with COVID? What's your thoughts on this whole COVID thing and gyms and all that shit?
Man, I mean, it's had a huge impact on martial arts, jiu-jitsu. I can't do any filming. There's no filming to be done right now. I had a bunch of plans to do these videos, and I still will do them, but fortunately I've actually got years and years and years worth of footage. And I never really realized how much footage I had. During the lockdown, I couldn't work for 3 months. We're told to stay indoors for 3 months. That's just ridiculous. Luckily, we're not here in Vancouver. It's not, the lockdown wasn't that strict. I lived by the beach. I was going out running every day. But I need to keep my mind occupied. So I got all my hard drives together and I started going through all the footage and writing down ideas for new videos. And I didn't realize, oh, wow, I had to get creative with ideas for videos. Because there was actually so much footage I had that I hadn't uploaded or done anything with. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm re-editing a lot of pieces. I'm putting new stuff together. We opened back up, and then I started training again, started teaching classes again. So that took my concentration away from video, but now we're locked down again. So I'm actually going back to video again. I posted one like a week ago on Ryan Hall, and that's had like over 100,000 views in a week. So yeah, I'm keeping my mind occupied with editing at the moment. But in terms of the lockdown, COVID, I don't know, it seems, I mean, the government say they're looking after our health. They're looking at, I don't know since when the government really fucking cared about our health. I mean, there's been an opiate epidemic for God knows how long. They don't do anything about that, you know? It's, there's very low.
You actually, I know that you've, hopefully don't make me cut this out, but you've talked about it before.
Yeah, no, I'm very open about it. Yeah.
And I think your story is amazing. And I think it kind of taps right into it, and we could probably catch it, like get back like that. But I think that like this story is fascinating. And I think that you get a lot of credit for this. And I think that your courage to do what you did and to explore is just, as a friend, watching you go through that is just so much courage. And yeah. I think that it was just, I commend you for doing it. But I think that story is quite interesting because you still, and I'm going to tie this in a sense that like, you still have to do things even when you're fucked up.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think that ties into like, what was you could just share it, I guess, like when you were in Thailand.
Yeah, so it was actually growing up, I got diagnosed with OCD when I was quite young in high school. I'm still now, all the time, I still dabble in psychedelics because I'm still on this process of trying to, understand the world and myself and why I'm a certain way and why I do things a certain way. So I got OCD, I had OCD when I was younger. I'm not sure when that started, but I think that is why I get good at certain things. And like, I really excel at certain things, but I'm really bad at other things. If I like something, I take an interest in it, I do it 100%. But if I don't have an interest in it, it's very difficult for me to even listen. Mm-hmm. So when I was traveling, like the story I've just told, I used to have a very noisy mind, at times when I wasn't. That's why editing and training is very therapeutic to me, because my mind can switch off. And then I started to dabble in diazepam. And I remember taking this, and it was one of the first times in my life I felt peaceful. My mind was really still. I'm like, wow, I could actually concentrate more. But benzodiazepam is one of the most addictive, dangerous drugs on the planet, and I was very ignorant to these things. So I started to take them just for flying, to get through the flight. But I was flying so much that I started to take these things very regular, and these things have a rebound effect. The next day you wake up feeling terrible. But I started to realize when you wake up, if you take one with a coffee, it's like a hangover. When you have a hangover is actually withdrawal. If you have some hair of the dog, is the saying, you have a beer in the morning and the withdrawal goes away, the hangover is gone. So that's what I would do with diazepam. I would take one for the flight. I would wake up the next day feeling like crap wherever I was. I was in America, Brazil, wherever. And I would take one. Oh, no, I feel good. You know, get on my day. That's how it starts. I didn't realize how dangerous these things were. So I started taking these diazepams every day. And then I think I got a knee injury. I got prescribed opiates, a very dangerous opiate called tramadol. Mm-hmm. And then I've just got an addictive personality. Anything I get into.
Well, it wasn't very addictive. It wasn't very, there was no barrier of entry when you're in Thailand.
Yeah, so that was the problem with Thailand. I got prescribed these things, but then and I took a liking to them, not knowing how dangerous and addictive they were. And still, I'm very young at the time, 27. I don't understand my own personality yet. Yeah. So you buy these things over the counter in Thailand, and for cheap, you can buy a pack of 10 tramadol for 50 baht. 50 baht is like $2. $2 for a pack of 10 tramadol. You know, and those things fuck you up.
Yeah.
So, I just ended up going down a bad route. And I was always very dedicated to training, to filming. And these things actually, they weren't having a negative effect at first, for the first year. But then my tolerance started to build up. And as the years went on, my tolerance got higher and higher and higher, to the point where when I would wake up in the morning, I would have to take probably like 2 diazepam and 10 tramadol with a coffee, just to get out of bed, just to get my day going.
Wow. But
then it started to have an effect on my motivation, my physicality. I started to get lazy. My work, you can see, I even remember the comments on my YouTube channel, you could see a big decline in the quality of my work. Because of my OCD, I was very laser focused. I'm a perfectionist. But these things started to work against me and made me lazy. There would be very bad edits, like sloppy spelling mistakes, and it just wasn't me. And my jiu-jitsu as well started to become really sloppy. I remember Fernando Macachero, I was like his #1 student in Thailand, and he watched me slowly decline, and my weight, I started to get smaller and smaller, because I've always been quite a stocky, I've always been like a stocky guy ever since I was in school. I had a baby face, but I've always had like big arms. I don't know why. I get it off my mum. My mum's got like Schwarzenegger legs and arms. So I remember coming out to America, and because when you met me, I was quite a stocky guy. Mm-hmm. I came out to America, and I remember you met me. You saw how skinny I was. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't really realized it myself. And I remember I was out in America for a while. I returned back to Thailand. I remember Fernando watching me roll with people that I would usually destroy. And I'm just getting fucked up by everybody in the room. I remember Fernando sitting beside going, "Hey, you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, why?" He's like, "You're not the same. You know, your jiu-jitsu is not the same. Like, you just don't seem the same. You're not present. You know, what's wrong?" I'm like, and I was in denial. I was like, no, nothing's wrong. I'm fine. That's what I always say. Even Roger Huerta, he pointed out to me, there was a few people that actually asked me, you know, one-to-one, they were like, "Hey, look, something's wrong. What is it? Because you're not who you used to be." And I would just blow it off, you know, because I wasn't ready to admit to myself that I had a problem.
Sure.
So this went on for a few years until I was actually in Australia, and I ran out of these pills. My body went into withdrawal symptoms, and that was one of the scariest times of my life, because I started getting like an extreme anxiety, like heart palpitations, like these like brain zaps, like brain fog, and just like sweating and shaking. And I remember when that happened, I was like, "Shit, what's wrong with me?" And I kind of knew, but I had to Google it, like withdrawal symptoms from diazepam and opiates. Sure enough, every symptom I had, there it is. So I got the first flight back to Thailand. I remember getting on that flight because I was going through withdrawal symptoms on like a 10-hour flight from Melbourne to Phuket, Thailand. It was the worst 10 hours of my life, you know, just trying to hold it together, trying to act normal and go through security when I'm a fucking shivering wreck, you know. And then I arrived back in Thailand. I go to a pharmacy, I buy some of these pills. I feel brand new. I feel great. Wow. So I'm like, fuck, this is a fucking problem. So I started looking up, you know, about addiction and the long-term effects of these things. And I started to see how many people die from this, and how many people in the world actually suffer with this problem, because I was unaware of it. I didn't really think I could ever get addicted to things. And so I called up my mum back in England, and I told her the truth. I was like, hey, Mum, I got a problem. She couldn't even, I've always been so into sport and really looked after my health, eat well. She couldn't believe it. She was like really quite shocked, but she was very, you know, she's a mother, you know, she wanted to help. So she's like, look, I think you should come home to England. So I flew back to England, and then that's where I went on to do a taper. We went to a doctor, and I went through a 1-year withdrawal process where we slowly tapered down. And that was the most difficult, uncomfortable, like horrific year of my life. It was, I can't even begin to describe not only the physical pain, but the psychological pain that I went through, not knowing if I'd ever be normal again, because these things have such an effect on the serotonin, dopamine, GABA receptors in your brain. You know, it messes up.
And this is all shit over the counter, right?
All shit over the counter. Yeah. So I went through this withdrawal process, and that was hard. When I got through it all, I managed to get clean on December 4th, 2016. And I got a job offer.
What's today's date?
Oh, fuck. December 4th, 2020. So 4 years ago.
Well, congratulations.
Today, oh, wow. Yeah, what a coincidence.
When you said that, I looked up, I went.
I didn't even realize, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, 4 years ago. It seems like longer, to be honest. But yeah, so even when I got through the withdrawals, you suffer with something called, there's the acute withdrawal process. But then
Say that again?
There's the acute withdrawal process, and then there's something called post-acute withdrawal syndrome.
Why don't you go through both of those a little bit?
So the acute ones is like the real physical withdrawals that I experienced. It lasted for a year. It's like all that, like the sweating, the brain zaps, you know, the restless body syndrome. That's the worst. You know, you can't sleep. You're just in bed. That would be the worst. In the daytime, I could distract myself by going for long walks, listening to good music, watching positive films, you know, watching films like E.T. and, you know, Toy Story, and just positive films. I would just try and make everything like, yeah, don't watch any dark stuff. So the post-acute withdrawal syndrome is when you're clean. I was like, I've got off it. No more pills in my body. But it takes a couple of years, a year or maybe longer, for your brain chemistry to rebalance and to feel how you did before. So post-acute withdrawal syndrome consists of chronic fatigue syndrome and extreme cravings and anxiety. And this can last a year, maybe more.
And
so,
what would be an example?
An example of
what you would be craving? Like, is it like
craving drugs? So
you still want? And did you find yourself like craving to do any drug?
Anything that would just take me out of the mind space that I was in, the discomfort that I was in. It's very hard to describe what cravings are like, but the overwhelming. So I remember it got to January 1st. So I'm almost a month clean, and I'm going to bed at night, and I'm having dreams about going into a pharmacy and buying pills. They're actually in your dreams.
Wow.
And then I got a job offer in Singapore for Evolve MMA. I accepted the job offer, but my mum knew. She's like, you're not ready to go. You're not the same. You know, you need more time. And I was like, no, I need to go. I need to get out of here. But in the back of my mind, I was like, if I leave now and go to Singapore, I'm going to relapse. So another blessing in disguise. I've had many blessings in disguise in the life, with a broken arm, a broken foot. This time it was my appendix. I'm literally about to go out to Singapore, and my appendix go gangrenous. So I get rushed into hospital. They operate on me right away. And I'm thinking, fuck me. I've just gone through a year of withdrawals, and now my appendix go. What fucking else is going to happen? Like, what is life doing to me at the moment?
Yeah.
It turns out that was a good thing, because it stopped me going out to Singapore too soon. So when I went into the hospital and I got my appendix removed, they put you on opiates as a painkiller.
No way.
I remember my parents coming into the hospital to visit me, and my face was glowing. I felt great. And my mum and dad were like, hey, you look good. I'm like, I feel great. And then we realized, my mum's like, do you know why you feel great? And I'm like, why? She's like, because you're on morphine right now. And I'm like, fuck, she's right. Like, so that was like my body getting what it was craving for a month.
Wow.
So I basically had to go back home and recover from the surgery for a couple of months. But this is when I truly knew, it's like, right, I can't go out to Singapore like this. So I realized I was still an addict, and I still had these mental health problems. I still was suffering bad with these obsessions, these compulsions, these addictions. And so I read online, I'd heard about ayahuasca and psychedelics, and I always thought it was something you do for fun. I didn't realize it was actually like, it had all these other benefits for depression, anxiety. It's a cure for depression, anxiety, addiction, all these things. Even certain illnesses, it's supposed to help. I can't say which ones, but so I read that. I started to read up about ayahuasca. I'm like, huh. And they say when you look into ayahuasca, you have a calling for it. And that's true, because there was something like, it's very hard to describe, but I just had this like strong, like this feeling like I need to go and do this. This might be the answer.
It kind of felt like it was like a spiritual pull.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, not some hippie guy. I'm like, I'm not like, something like that believes, like follow the star signs and that stuff. But I just had this good feeling inside that this is something I need to do, because I can't go on feeling like this, So it was so strange how this happened. I started looking up online, and I came across a place in Denmark, and I can't even remember how I came across it. Just through loads of searching around on the internet, and I found a place called the Spirit of Aya in Denmark, Copenhagen, Denmark. And I sent them an email and said, hey, I told them a brief summary of what I've just
told them I could film for you if you exchanged it for that.
So they emailed back pretty much immediately, and they said, Stuart, because there was a ceremony in 3 weeks' time, and it said fully booked. So I sent them an email just thinking, oh, you never know, because it said like booked for the rest of the year. So I called them up, and they're like, hey, Stuart, you're in luck. We literally just had someone drop out today, so we have an open space. So the ceremony is in 3 weeks' time. Do you want us to book you in? And I'm like, yes, please, let's do it. And it was 300 euros. That's nothing. 300 euros and it was a weekend, 2 ayahuasca ceremonies. So, and the flight was really cheap as well. So they're like, right, we'll see you in 3 weeks. And they told me what to do. They said, look, no coffee, no tea, no meat, no stimulants, no drugs, nothing. Your body has to be clean before you come and do this. And nothing. Otherwise, you could have some adverse reactions of the ayahuasca. Make sure you're not taking anything. And by this time, I wasn't. If I was to go and do ayahuasca while I'm still on opiates and benzodiazepines, it could kill me. You could get something called serotonin syndrome.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of trust going in, because they ask you before you drink ayahuasca, like, all right, we're just going to mention this one more time. If anyone's on antidepressants, speak up now, because it could have and they don't know. There's no proof that you're not, but I mean, why would you lie anyway? Why would you go and do
at that point, right? At that point.
Yeah. So, I did the ayahuasca diet. I ate nothing but like brown rice and broccoli for like 3 weeks and water. I remember my mum and dad like cooking some nice meals and wondering why I wasn't eating, because I couldn't tell them. I'd just gone through some withdrawals. They don't even know what ayahuasca was. I couldn't tell them the truth about what I was about to do, because they were. And
you definitely, if you look it up online, I mean, I would sure as your parents would probably just be like, you're going to do what?
And there's a lot of false stories online. A lot of what you'll see online is not true, about ayahuasca. I'm pretty sure like Big Pharma puts out some false information about this stuff, because, well, right now, Big Pharma have lost a customer for life in myself. So I went out to Copenhagen. I flew out there. When I got to Copenhagen, I met up with 3 people I've never met in my life. And I had my wits about me, because I don't know who these people are. I don't know where I'm going. I'm going to an island called Fimu. Only 100 people live in this island. Have you ever seen the film The Wicker Man?
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, I had that in my head. Like, what if I'm like a sacrificial goat? You know, like, what if I'm like, they're going to do something?
Yeah, I'm giving myself up to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not only that, you're going to get put out.
Yeah. But then I had confidence. I was like, right, if this really is a setup, I've got jiu-jitsu. I'll fuck these people up anyway. They don't stand a chance. I'll choke them all. So, but when I met them at the airport, it was pretty quick to know, like, all right, yeah, this is real. So it was like a 3-hour drive in the car. We got to a ferry point, and we got on this ferry. It's a 1-hour ferry over to this island. And there's no one on this island. It's a beautiful island. It's cold. It's a beautiful, clear skies. We fast for 12 hours. And then I was the first one. We actually, everyone meets everyone. There's 18 people there. And then
oh, wow, a lot more than I thought.
18 people, 2 shaman, and a few shaman apprentices, people helping out. And then you all sit around in a circle on your yoga mats. And you don't have to say why you're there, but everyone sits there and introduces themselves. And optional, tell your story. So, you know, I tell my story, and I was literally the only person there with addiction issues. Other people are there. Some people are there out of curiosity. Some people are there to, this is something I'm interested in, to look into the past life. This is like a big thing with ayahuasca. I've never had any past life experiences. I'm interested in it because it does seem a bit crazy to me. But people were there to you know, look back into the past life.
Connect or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Like I said, I've never had that experience myself. Other people there, like I remember there's one woman there. She had lost her son a few years ago, and she wanted to, you know, get over that. So I remember when that night I was the first person up to drink the ayahuasca. So they called me up first. It's like in a little wooden cup. And then before you drink the ayahuasca, they're burning, like, is it sage? And Palo Santo, they're clearing the space. And they're singing Icaros. If you didn't know anything about ayahuasca or what it was, and you were to walk in that room, you'd be like, what the fuck is going on here? This is like some kind of satanic cult.
Is it kind of like Catholicism or in the Catholic Church when they're walking with those little things that have the smoke?
I don't think I've seen that.
Well, they have these little chain things, and on the bottom look like little balls like this big. And then they're basically, I don't know what the output reason is for it in the Catholic Church, but I think it has to do with spiritual cleansing or something like that. And it basically, they're like these little kind of ball or little, I don't know, containers or whatever. And then it's just kind of this, like, it's almost like a dry ice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing like that. It's like incense and like
incense.
Palo Santo's a little piece of wood.
Got it.
You know, that it's got a very specific smell to it.
Okay.
And I gotta say, there's something in this. You know, they're clearing the space. They're getting rid of the bad spirits in the room.
Wow.
And I've never been one to believe in ghosts, spirits, alternate dimensions, all that freaking fairy tale bullshit. You know.
Sure.
But I'd lost all hope. I was like, hey, let's see if this works. You know, I drink the ayahuasca, and it was maybe 40 minutes later, I could feel it kicking in. I'm like, whoa, I think I feel it. I was very nervous. I was scared, you know, going in. But I was in like the perfect state of mind because I'd lost my life couldn't have gone. It's like my life was all the way up here. I was living the dream. Yeah. I was living my dream. And then it all came crashing back down. I was like up here, and my life, somehow I fucked it all up, and I almost lost my life. And that ayahuasca, I don't know what the science is in it. I don't know how it works, but it brought me back. So that night, I can't put into words what actually happened, what I experienced, what I saw. But I remember that night, I just was lying back on my yoga mat, and I was just filled with I was overwhelmed with love and joy and all these good memories.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I just had nothing but positive thoughts about everything good that's happened to my life. Every person I've ever cared about in my life came into my head. Like, it was just all love. I was like, wow, I've got so many great people in my life. I just started to appreciate everything because I was in such a negative space. All that was going through my head was, this is shit. This is bad. Why is this happening to me? And that night, it was just like, wow, this is good. This has happened to me. It was just the opposite. And I woke up the next day, and I noticed I didn't have cravings. I'm like, wow, but I still felt a little bit fatigued and I didn't feel great. But the first night was a tester. I just had one glass of ayahuasca.
Oh, wow.
I handled it well. So the second night, they're like, right. So the first night is usually a test to see how well you react.
But did you know that it was a test?
Yeah. They kind of tell you, they say the first night's just to see, we'll just do one glass, you know? So the second night, I drank a glass. 2 hours later, they called me up. They said, Stuart, you're going to do one more. I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, you'll do one more. Because the first night I would open up my eyes, the room is still there. Everything's still normal. But when you close your eyes, I was having a lot of visuals and nice feelings. But the second night, when I had that second glass, she called me up and it was the same as the first night. But when I drank the second glass, about 30 minutes later, I'm gone. I am blasted off into another, I just can't even put into words. Remember, I couldn't even move. I'm lying back on my yoga mat after 2 glasses of ayahuasca, and I'm just in this other place, you know. And when I opened up my eyes, the room is there, but the room is filled with geometric patterns. And then the shaman comes up to me. She kind of like floats over to me in this glittering geometric like shape, like with different arms coming out. She's like, Stuart, you're gonna have another glass. And I remember opening my eyes. I'm like, I'm pretty gone right now. I'm not sure if I can have another. She's like, no, you handle it well. You need to go deeper. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, you're going to have another glass. So she gave me a third glass. Then when I drank that third glass, I literally just disconnected from my body. I could no longer feel my body anymore. It was just my consciousness in, again, I can't put it into words. You can't. It's like one of those things you just can't describe. So I was pretty gonzoed in a different place for like 6 hours. But when I woke up the next day, I was like, I was back. I was like my old self. My brain felt good. Until this day, like until I realized growing up, I had these mental health problems. I had really bad OCD. But now, I don't know what the ayahuasca did. It's like it rewired my brain. And I'm better than ever. And my life has been great ever since.
What an awesome story.
What I always tell people is I almost lost my life and got my life taken away from me by pharmaceutical drugs that got prescribed to me by a doctor. Mm-hmm. And then to get my life back and to heal myself, I had to break the law and do something illegal. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's an interesting play. You're right.
I mean, I'm not really one for, I like a few conspiracies, but why are these things illegal? If they help, and it's becoming clear, well, they are actually getting legalized. I think Colorado just legalized psilocybin. I think they decriminalized all psychedelics. Mm-hmm. Vancouver are doing the same soon, I think. But there's a lot of other, I truly do think Big Pharma don't want you to know about this stuff. They're, doing a lot of things in their power to keep certain things hidden, because they're losing customers. People with addiction problems and depression, they go and do a psychedelic for 300 euros.
Wow. Yeah.
Get life back. Now they have no desire to do these pharmaceutical drugs, antidepressants, opiates, whatever it is. So yeah, it's really crazy, So I sympathize a lot with people with addiction here in Vancouver. There is a street called Hastings. It's very much like LA Skid Row. I cycled down there last night. I kind of like to go down there sometimes just to have a look, because that could have been me, Mm-hmm. And I just see these people, and they're not, and sadly, they're not human anymore. They're like, it's really hard to see these people. These probably not nice people at one point, and you see people at different states as well. Like I saw this one girl, and she's really skinny, and she's probably only been addicted to fentanyl is what they're all addicted to maybe a few months. And she's still dressed normally, but you can see it in her face. And I saw her buying drugs. But like I say, by different stages, she probably looked healthy a few months ago. And now these drugs are really getting a hold of her. And in a few months' time, she keeps going down the road. She's going to look like the rest of them. The rest of them look like skeletons. They're not, like I said, like when you go down that road, it's like The Walking Dead, literally. It's a scene from The Walking Dead. There's thousands of them in tents on the pavement. It's fucked up to see. And to know that there's enough money in the world to help these people, and the government are not doing fuck all to help these people.
Well, I think that ties into like what I think is a lot of the problem I have right now with COVID. And it's not so much that you don't have medical and you don't have science and things like that. Okay, I can listen to things like here. The biggest problem that I have, and I think that you would agree, is that I haven't heard them stand up one time and say, let's increase our vitamins, or can we or here's a coupon from the government, or here's a rebate from the government on all vegetables.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, it's like the government solution is just stay in your homes, lock down, but they keep bars open. You can still go and buy alcohol. You can still go and buy cigarettes. It's really strange. I've had to get a lot of information from the Joe Rogan podcast. He seems to be one of the people putting out, you know, over ideas of things to boost your immune system, and having different people on this podcast, you know, with a different take on what's going on. It's so great that things like the Joe Rogan podcast exist. If it wasn't for his podcast, I might not be here today, because it was because of his podcast I heard about ayahuasca.
That's right.
It's because of his podcast I heard about vitamin D, you know, for COVID. And now
he's talked about your videos on his show.
Yeah, he's actually played him on his show a couple of times. Yeah.
I think that's like, and I think that one thing I think that's like really cool is that you, and I can't keep bringing it back to this, because it's like, I think that you are an entity as a person, but you're also an entity as a business. And then you also collaborated with someone else. But in a way, what you did though is you had a brand and you had the thing that you were doing. You went off the rails, right? I mean, in a sense, and you know, I'll probably share stories of myself going off the rails and stories that I say, I'm glad I went a little crazy for a while. Cause I mean, that's we're all human, right? We're all human. And I think it's like, as you did that, you kept a brand, and it's almost like, cause I remember talking to you and we go through these things in life. And I remember you saying something, and you're like, did I say anything? It was like out of the blue or something. And you had it on your mind, like, did I say anything during that time that made you mad? Or you were like going through that process. And I was like, no, man, I'm pretty easy going. Yeah,
I think when I was going through that, like I said, I wasn't myself, you know. I may have, it wasn't me, you know. And I actually cut myself off. You noticed, like, I went offline for a year. I didn't speak to anyone.
Yeah.
And I think a few of my friends were actually upset before I just cut them off. But it was like I was going through a process, you know.
Yeah, you were going through a process. And I think that it's like, to hear that story of, you know, you were doing something that you loved, and you almost had like the fairy tale story, right? I mean, I do what you love and you'll make the most money and you will love your life, right? But in doing that, there was a whole function that went along with it. And it was almost like, and I'm saying this because by saving grace, that you had the blessing of a great mother, really, and a father that would take you back in, right? So that's a blessing.
Yeah, my mom and dad, they're awesome. They really are.
Yeah, you do give that credit. But the other thing too that I think that gave you that stepping stone is that you had a brand in a way. And I'm not trying to put like everything together on that, but at the end of the day, you had a stepping stone when you came out to kind of step on, right?
Yeah.
You had something to stand on. And it was like, if that wasn't there, you would have been like, well, where do I go? You know what I mean? And then that's what's transitioned to you. And obviously you and I are very good friends. I mean, we've got stories in different countries and things like that we could do this for hours. But I think that like pulling this into what I think a lot of this has to do with, especially with your story, is like you passionately did something, you got addicted to something that this government or governments in general are involved in. And then you kind of went back to what you knew. And now you're in, like, tell just a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, after the ayahuasca ceremony, I was back. I felt better than ever. I got my confidence back. I was happy again. I started to put weight on again. I started to lift weight. I started to train jiu-jitsu. I remember going to train jiu-jitsu the weekend after that ayahuasca ceremony. That's one of the best rolling sessions I've ever had in my life. It was amazing. And then I I sent an email to Evolve MMA in Singapore. I fly out to Singapore. I'm there for a year, teaching jiu-jitsu. And that was an important year as well, because that was like a year of integration of just kind of processing just what I'd just been through, you know, the last few years, the addiction and the psychedelic experience itself. And then it was a year for me to learn how to teach jiu-jitsu, you know, because I'd never really taught full time before. And I was there for a year, and then it was Singapore is a different culture. You know, I was teaching 8 classes a day, 6 days a week. And that's too much to ask of someone. That's a lot. It's, I mean, the turnover of black belts at Evolve MMA is ridiculous. Because no one lasts. Like, you can 8 classes a day, 6 days a week is, you know, is a lot. It's an exploitation of workforce, if you ask me. So then Tiger Muay Thai noticed I was there, and they were like, hey, do you want to come back to Tiger Muay Thai and become the head jiu-jitsu coach? So I went back to Tiger Muay Thai. I became the head jiu-jitsu coach of Tiger Muay Thai in 2017. I stayed there for 2 years. Ryan Diaz turned up, planted the seed of Vancouver. I was suffering with some staph infections. I just kept getting reoccurring staph. It's nasty in Thailand. Like, staph is just rampant everywhere. I got it 10 times in 1 year. So I was on antibiotics a lot. So I was like, Ryan planted the seed at the right time. It's all time. Everything's timing, isn't it? And then, now I took the opportunity, and I've been in Vancouver, Canada for a year. And things are going great. I've been teaching. I've got a set group of students. I've never had that before. And I've watched them all progress over the last year. And jiu-jitsu was really starting to, it's great. I've never had that before. I was seeing, like, when I'm teaching them something, I'm teaching these moves, but then they're starting to do it. They're putting it all together now, and I'm watching, oh, wow, they're really, like, they're doing it now.
Well, what a cool feeling.
Yeah, it's a great feeling. And now, you know, COVID has happened, but we'll be back. You know, I just hope everything returns.
Yeah.
You know, when like 9/11, they always say, like, whenever the government take away a bunch of freedoms, I just hope everything returns to how it was. I can't help but think that maybe not everything's going to return the same. They're going to take the sweet ass time of making things return to normal. I mean, this vaccine is ready in England anyway. They're putting it out next week, I think.
Hey, you know, you don't want to jump into conspiracy theories, but isn't this kind of interesting? It's kind of nice to have a vaccine that's coming out, which means that if I were to make 300 million of those, I'm going to want a demand.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting that the cases, and again, this, I could probably get slashed for this, but the cases are increasing at the same time. The desire for them to sell the vaccine or get you to get the vaccine are coming together. I think that that's quite interesting, you know, to put all that together and then to shut all the businesses down before the holidays. I mean, there's a lot going on. And, you know, with myself having a martial arts background and you having a martial arts background, you realize that there's a lot of therapy that goes on with people that do jiu-jitsu or kickboxing, Muay Thai. There's a camaraderie that goes on. You get to see people. We were talking about that earlier. So I think that they're shutting off a lot of our things, right? That we naturally have.
I think when this pandemic first hit, everyone agreed. People closed the businesses. We closed our gym before the government even told us to close our gym. I think a lot of people did that. We were all panicked. We saw what happened in Italy, and everyone agreed. Lockdown for 2 to 4 weeks. No one even questioned it. If the government were honest, said, "Hey, you're going to lock down for 8 months, and we're barely going to help you. You know, we're not going to give you. We're just going to give you enough." Like here in Canada, I just moved here. You know, the government were giving me $2,000 a month. Mm-hmm. My rent is $1,850. So that leaves me $150 for food for the month.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, I'm single. I made some money off my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But I'm fortunate. I've got family. You know, this COVID made me realize how fortunate I am with friends and family to support me during this time. There's other people out there that don't have the help. And there's a lack of help in the government in certain countries as well. So it's crazy, like what the effects that this lockdown is having on people's mental health. It's like, I don't know. I just think it's been handled wrong, especially in the UK. The government in UK are just incompetent. They did a terrible job of this, you know. And there's all these protests going on, and there's such a divide going on right now. You know, it's a strange time, but you always say you got to break down before you kind of like build back up again. So hopefully things improve.
I think that probably is the greatest closure of this podcast, of the story that you just told. From every breaking that you had was a rebuild scenario. And I think that, you know, one last thing that I think I'll say from this. And first thing is, you could go look on YouTube and look up Stuart Cooper Films. If you are someone that is involved in jiu-jitsu, if you've ever wanted to be involved in jiu-jitsu, you can go to Stuart Cooper Films on YouTube and just watch these videos. And if anything, there's a sense of motivation just in your life. You get a lot from these. But I think one thing I think that I wanted to get from you in a sense of, what do you think jiu-jitsu does for people? And then that is a closure I think that I would love to get from you. After you teach it, you've done it, you've used it as your anchor. What is it that you think jiu-jitsu is for people and benefit? Not just self-defense, maybe.
For me, with confidence and self-esteem, for sure. You know, when I was at school, I was very quiet. I was very self-conscious. I remember when I first started jiu-jitsu, I could barely look people in the eyes. You know, I wasn't used to shaking people's hands and mixing with people and, you know, like talking to people that, you know, I don't know. You know, I had my group of friends I was myself around, but I wasn't good around other people. So jiu-jitsu really taught me to, just like be relaxed around other people. And, you know, it just gave me confidence, you know, confidence in myself to be who I actually am, you know. So, yeah, there's so many good things. I mean, like you said, it's not just self-defense.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Stu. You're a friend, and you're the very beginnings of this. I'm going to go ahead and stamp this as you're the one that's one of the people that have always encouraged me I should do this, I should do more, I should do more. And, you know, I know this is a podcast, but just my thankfulness of your friendship over the years, and I hope we get to do this a heck of a lot more. Stuart Cooper Films. Yeah. Mr. Stuart Cooper Films himself. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you then. Thanks, buddy.
No problem.
If you like this episode, make sure you smash the like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just like Nike is to athletes, Moved is to entrepreneurs.